And you are podcasting with Gary DeMar. Let's figure things out.
Well, I've been issued a challenge, and of course this isn't the first time I've been challenged on the topic of eschatology, and I enjoy a challenge. I'm a bit competitive by nature, and I think challenging somebody's position is good. It does a couple of things. It forces you to reinvestigate your position. Sometimes somebody will come up with an interesting take on a particular passage, and I enjoy that. And this is the way I learn. It's difficult for me to sit down and just read something and absorb it and hold on to it. I learn by doing, and being challenged is a good thing. And there was a lengthy comment that was posted on American Vision's Facebook page in response to the promotion of David Chilton's little book, The Great Tribulation, which was obviously on Matthew 24 for the most part, and it was taken from his book, Paradise Restored. Both of those books are available at AmericanVision.org. And I'm guessing that the commentator, the person who posted, did not bother to read Chilton's book, because almost everything he asks in this challenge to me, most of it could have been found in Chilton's book. But it would have saved him and me a lot of time and trouble. But actually, like I said, I enjoy it. It's no trouble, because I've heard and responded to these arguments numerous times over the years. I mean, I've been doing this, since the mid 1970s. So I've been at this a long time. I've debated numerous people over the years, in live debates, radio debates, written debates, numerous articles, numerous books, sitting down with people and discussing these types of topics. Of course, with Facebook, it's a never-ending story, which again, I really like. No, he ended his comment with this challenge. He says, "I could go on, but you will have a hard enough time refuting what I just posted, but do try." So I will try. So I'm going to read his comments first. Remember, this is in response to a promotion of David Chilton's book, The Great Tribulation. And here's what he says. "Wow, I wouldn't want to be in your shoes when you stand before the throne of God. Jesus clearly talks about the end times when the apostles asked him about it. Israel stopped being a sovereign nation when Babylon destroyed it. Jesus then talks about the budding of the fig tree in Luke chapter 21, which is a symbol of Israel regaining its nationhood. He also said, that is Jesus, when we see that happen, Israel becoming a nation again, that generation would not pass away until all these things were fulfilled." He's misquoting Matthew 24:34. Then he says Israel became a nation again on May 14th, 1948. That generation, he writes, is now in their 70s. The generation spoken of by Jesus is the generation that started in 1948. Also, at no time in history has there been a mark put in someone's hand or forehead that without it you would not be able to buy, sell, or trade. The technology never existed until today. Today, with computers, digital currency, mass surveillance, etc., this new world order and the mark can clearly be seen coming to fruition today. The Ezekiel war, that is, the war found in Ezekiel 38-39, has not happened, but is gearing up today. Zechariah 14:12 describes the plague that will befall those who attack Israel in the Ezekiel war. It is a very accurate description of a nuclear war. Sorry to tell you that didn't already happen, but is going to happen. I could go on, but you will have a hard enough time refuting what I just posted, but do try. So again, here we go. So let's start. I won't be able to cover every single thing here, but I'm going to cover the major points here. If Israel is the fig tree in Matthew 24:32 and Luke 21:29, then what do you do with Matthew 21:18 through 19? I'm going to quote this. "Now in the early morning when he was returning to the city, Jesus became hungry. And seeing a lone fig tree by the road, he came to it and found nothing on it except leaves only. And he said to it, no longer shall there ever be any fruit from you. And at once the fig tree withered. Now, what does Jesus say about the fig tree in Matthew 20:21? No longer shall there ever be any fruit from you. How do you then compare that to and reconcile it with this claim that the fig tree is Israel becoming a nation again in 1948? By the way, nothing in Matthew 24 or Luke 21 or Mark 13 says anything about Israel becoming a nation again. In fact, you won't find anything in the entire New Testament that says anything about Israel becoming a nation again. So, if Israel is the fig tree, Matthew chapter 21 tells us there'll never be fruit from it again. So what do you do with that? In fact, if you go to Luke's version of this, how do you deal with Luke's version where it states in all the trees? So it doesn't say just the fig tree, it says in all the trees in 21:29. John Walvoord, someone who believes very much probably like this individual, stated the following. He says, he dismissed the claim that the fig tree illustration in Matthew 24:32 is Israel becoming a nation again. Dispensational author Mark Hitchcock takes issue with the often used argument that the fig tree in Matthew 24:32 refers to Israel becoming a nation again. He makes this point in his book, The Complete Book of Bible Prophecy. And there are other dispensationalists who reject the popular belief that the fig tree of Matthew 24 refers to modern-day Israel. And the following are comments from Larry D. Pettigrew, and he's a professor at Dispensational-Oriented Master's Seminary. He writes, the fig tree, however, does not illustrate Israel becoming a nation in 1948. The fig tree is simply an illustration from nature. So there you have it. You got even those within the dispensational camp who claim this is the Israel illustration in Matthew chapter 24 and Luke 21 doesn't have anything to do with Israel becoming a nation again. And I think one of the reasons a lot of dispensationalists moved from the position that it does refer to Israel becoming a nation again is because of what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 21. So let's continue. So I asked the question, why did this guy change the wording of Matthew 24 by using the word that rather than this? Jesus did not say, when you see Israel becoming a nation again, referring to a distant future generation, that yet generation would not pass away until all these things were fulfilled. I mean, that's basically his argument, that Jesus isn't referring to the generation of his day. He's referring to a generation in the future when you see Israel becoming a nation again. Jesus doesn't say anything in the text about Israel becoming a nation again. And he has to use the word that and change the meaning, and actually just eliminating the word this from the context where Jesus says this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. This is a near demonstrative. It describes something that is in fact near in time. In this generation, if you go through Matthew's gospel, Mark's gospel, and Luke's gospel, this generation always refers to the generation to whom Jesus was speaking. You can check this out, for yourself. Matthew 11, 11 verses 16 through 19, chapter 12 verses 39 and 41 and 42, Matthew 16:4, Matthew 17:17, Matthew 23. 36 through 38, Mark 8:12, Luke 7:31, Luke 11:29, 30 and 31, 32 and 50 and 51, Luke 17:25, and Luke 21:32. So the text says this generation will not pass away. He does not say the generation that's where Israel becomes a nation again will not pass away. He's adding something to the text in order to get it to say what he needs it to say. Now, notice what Matthew 24:33 says. And this is one of the important things about Bible prophecy, especially when you start to get to Matthew's gospel, Jesus uses the second person plural throughout. So you get to Matthew chapter 24:33, which is the verse right before verse 34, and Jesus says, so you too. Who are the you there? The you are those people in Jesus' audience, those of that generation, that future generation which Jesus describes as this generation, their generation. So you too, the you being them, when you see all these things, recognize that he is near, or it is near, right at the door. So both, if the first you refers to them, then the second you refers to them. So you too, when you see all these things, recognize that either it is near, the coming destruction that Jesus describes about, not one stone here was left upon another, or that Jesus himself is near, right at the doors. The doors of what? I believe the doors of the temple. Most translations make this a singular when actually it's a plural. Right at the doors of the temple, bringing judgment upon it, just like Jesus said would happen before their generation passed away. The you referred in both cases to those in Jesus's audience. And this individual then talks about the length of a generation. Well, according to him, since Israel became a nation again in 1948, we are now in the 77th year of his claim of this is the generation. Now, in 1973, I read Hal Lindsey's The Late Great Planet Earth. I was a brand new Christian. I mean, really brand spanking new Christian. I didn't know anything about anything. The only thing I did know is that I was saved by God's grace, completely transformed my life. And so in reading Late Great Planet Earth, Hal Lindsey said that a generation was 40 years. So from 1948 plus 40, you get 1988. And so according to this individual, now a generation is more than 70 years. And so now we're coming up on actually 80 years a generation being. And so, 2028, it's going to be 80 years. And that is typically not considered a generation. But you had the dogmatism of Hal Lindsey, Chuck Smith, and many others who talked about the 40-year generation from 1948 to 1988. And of course, there was Edgar Wisnitz's book, 88 Reasons Why the Rapture is in 1988. Now, in a 1977 interview, April 15th, 1977 interview in Christianity Today, W. Ward Gasquet, in this interview, said this, says, but what if you're wrong, Hal? What if you're wrong? And see, Lindsey had said in this interview, there are a lot of world leaders who are pointing to the 1980s as being the time of some very momentous events. Perhaps it will be then, but I feel certain, Lindsey wrote back in 1977, that it will take place before the year 2000. And then Gasquet says, but what if you're wrong? And here's was Lindsey's response. Well, that's just a split seconds. There's just a split seconds difference between a hero and a bum. I didn't ask to be a hero, but I guess I've become one in the Christian community, so I accept it. But if I'm wrong about this, I guess I'll become a bum. Well, he didn't become a bum. He continued to write the same sort of end-time pot boiler, all is coming to an end. He did this almost all the way up until his death last year in 2024. So to ask this individual, how long will he stretch out a generation from 40 years to 70 years to 80 years to 90 years, 100 years? When will this stop? And he's stuck because he says 1948 was the beginning of all of this. So now we are in the 77th year of a generation that Hal Lindsey said was only supposed to be 40 years. Then he mentions today, with computers, digital currency, mass surveillance, etc., this new world order and that mark of the beast can clearly be seen coming to fruition today. And then he goes on to say, says that the Ezekiel war has not happened, but is gearing up today. You have to wonder if people have actually read Ezekiel 38 and 39. How do his claims fit with the weapons described in Ezekiel 38 and 39? Bows and arrows, soldiers on horseback, chariots, clubs, shields, and swords. What happened to all that technology that includes computers, digital currency, and mass surveillance? And so Ezekiel's war is described as an ancient war, an ancient battle. And yet this individual says, oh, we're going to have computers and digital currency and mass surveillance. You can't have it both ways here. The Gog and Magog war was fulfilled during the time of Esther. The parallels are unmistakable. There's the mention of Haman Gog and in Ezekiel 38 and 39, unwalled villages. Ezekiel and Esther agree with that. Gold, silver, cattle, and goods. Compare Ezra 1:4, Ezekiel 38:13. This is exactly what was brought back from the captivity that ended up being used to build the temple and the walls, etc. Same thing. It's not oil. It's not potash. It's not all of these things that people claim were that's what this means. No, it means gold, silver, cattle, and goods, and that is exactly what Haman wanted. He wanted to be paid in silver. Go back and read the book of Esther on this. These are ancient weapons, and I cover all of this in great detail in my book, The Gog and Magog End Time Alliance, and you can get that at AmericanVision.org. And it's a verse-by-verse study of Ezekiel 38 and 39 and Zechariah 12, which I believe are parallel accounts. And so with his view, he cannot reconcile the type of implements that are used in the Ezekiel 38-39 war with his claim that we're in a mass surveillance with computers, digital currency, etc., because those things wouldn't be working at all during this period of time because of what his particular view is all about, and it doesn't comport with the Gog and Magog battle. The further problem is that he has misplaced the New Testament version of the Gog and Magog war. The Gog and Magog war is mentioned in the book of Revelation, chapter 20, but it doesn't take place until after the 1,000 years. And so this Gog and Magog war, according to Revelation 20, according to his own view of Revelation 20, will not occur until 1,000 years from sometime after the rapture. So it's not even, the Gog and Magog war isn't even in play. But you might ask me, well, wait a minute, you said the Gog and Magog war was fulfilled during the time of Esther. And I said, yes, it was. And it is a type. And in the New Testament, it is that particular war which was designed to kill all the Jews. Read Esther chapter 3 is what Haman wanted to do. That is taken in principle and applied to Revelation chapter 20, very much like Babylon is used in chapters 18 and 19. Jezebel is used, Egypt and Sodom. All of these Old Testament types are used in the New Testament, in the book of Revelation, to express what the content of those things were in the Old Testament. Jezebel isn't revived again. Babylon, the Babylon of the Old Testament, isn't revived again. These are the principal applications of those fulfilled prophecies. Now, he mentions the plague, in which he says is a nuclear attack, and he quotes Zechariah 14:12, describes the plague that will befall those who attack Israel. The description of that plague is not a melting like you see in Raiders of the Lost Ark, something a nuclear war would bring. It's a rotting. It's something that rots. If you read Zechariah 14:12, it says, their flesh will rot while they stand on their feet, and their eyes will rot in their sockets, and their tongue will rot in their mouth. This is not a description of a nuclear war. The idea of rotting and so forth, I cover this in my upcoming book with Bob Cruikshank on Zechariah 14. I can't go into all the details of this, but this is not descriptive of what a nuclear war would have. In fact, a nuclear blast would result in incineration there wouldn't be any rotting taking place. The heat would be so severe that there wouldn't be anything around to rot. So, and we're back again to ancient weapons. Ezekiel's war is fought with bows and arrows, but supposedly, according to this individual, they now have nuclear weapons. And it sounds like the film Beneath the Planet of the Apes, an ancient culture which they find a nuclear weapon and then they set it off. Now, this is what you have to do to the text of Scripture in order to make it fit your particular perspective. I'll have more to say about this in an article. I'll be posting most of what I've just told you, and I'll be adding a couple of things, especially dealing with the buying and selling that you find in Revelation chapter 13. Does that have to do with commerce, or does it have to do with worship? Because Jesus uses that same language in Matthew chapter 21. But I'll cover more of this in a future American Vision article. So go to AmericanVision.org in the next week or so, and I'll have this posted so you can follow along with this in greater detail.
Thanks for podcasting with Gary DeMar. Please subscribe and share this with anyone you think really needs to hear it.